Okay, we are officially recording. Hello and welcome to the Outsmart Overeating podcast. I'm your host, Leslie Hooper, and alongside me is Coach Steph Miramontes. And today, I'm looking forward to discussing what the hell even is psychology-based weight loss. I know that this is a new concept for many, but first, before we dive into it, I just want to remind you all that the signature psychology-based weight loss program, Unstuffed, is going to temporarily be opening the doors to new clients on Monday, April 22nd. So you definitely want to join the interest list. There is zero obligation to do so, but you do get access to bonuses and other goodies if you register for that. Again, zero obligation to sign up for Unstuffed. Of course, we'd love to have you. But if you're even remotely interested, I would advise you to go ahead, join the interest list so you get all the early bird details and access to those bonuses. Okay, I am looking forward to today's topic because we are going to be explaining a little bit more about this psychology pillar in the Unstuffed program. Something I want you to think about first and foremost is, have you ever noticed how everyone in the diet industry sounds the same? Everyone wants you to eat more vegetables, get more sleep, drink more water, and exercise more. And I think, Steph, you would agree with me. This is pretty solid advice. But the problem is it's just surface level advice. It's what the 95% who are struggling are doing. And as we say, this is what creates an environment for a dieter to feel defeated. So I think this is where most people feel stuck and frustrated and get stuck in that drain, circling and not getting anywhere. So if you're trying to make a change from the action place of your life and it's not really working, then there's a good chance that it's because you are focusing on the surface level things first and foremost. And so we want to spend some time talking about the psychological component to this. So, Steph, any initial thoughts on that?
I agree with you that it's pretty solid advice. Move your body. It's meant to move. That's what we're built for. We got all sorts of limbs and muscles and things to be moved around. And I don't think that there's a whole lot of confusion when it comes to what would be considered general healthy eating. I think there's a lot of confusion in the diet industry world. We got folks from every side of the corner just eating all the meat, eating all the vegetables. Some of them are drinking their own urine. I mean, that kind of stuff is all over the place. But when it comes down to the nitty gritty, like just to be a basic, healthy, happy person, I think we know how to eat. So what's the problem? That's the question that we're going to answer today.
Yeah, exactly. It's like beating a dead horse here. We talk all the time about the diet industry focuses on the how, and we spend a lot of time focusing on the why. I will get back to that in just a moment, but I will say it wasn't too long ago that I asked my Instagram followers for names of individuals that they were following who helped their clients get into pretty good shape without calorie counting, macro tracking, no weighing food, and being able to eat all the things. So no food's off limits. And it was interesting because the response was crickets. There wasn't a whole lot of individuals who were recommended. However, there were a few intuitive eating coaches. And as we all know, intuitive eating is not a weight loss program. Intuitive eating is 10 anti-diet principles. So it's highly unlikely if this person is a true intuitive eating coach that they would be promoting weight loss geared activities or I guess a plan or structure. But I do think that the lines are getting very blurred as it relates to that. but I just feel like that's an easy way to notice who is a true intuitive eating coach versus somebody who is not, because intuitive eating does not focus on weight loss at all. And that's why I don't refer to myself or any of my programs as intuitive eating. And I want to make that distinction because I think words matter. So anyway, kind of getting back to what I was saying, it was really interesting to recognize that there wasn't, I guess what you could say is that really told me two things. First, most people have no idea what the hell a psychology-based approach to weight loss means. And Steph, I'm going to ask you about that in just a moment. But the other thing that it told me was that no one in the fitness industry is really doing this. And so I think it really highlights maybe why there's such a big disconnect in getting our clients permanent long-term results as general fitness weight loss coaches in the industry. So Steph, when you think about a psychology-based coach as a mentor on the subject, what comes to mind for you, and how can we explain it to our audience in maybe a very clear terms?
Oh, in clear terms? Gosh, you really want to challenge me this morning, don't you?
Well, I'm going to help you out, so no
Thanks.
pressure.
Thanks. When I think about being someone who uses psychology to help people get results, it really is less about what you're having people do and really meeting them where they are so they can overcome the obstacles that stop them from doing the things that they want to be doing in the first place. When people say things like, well, you must not want it bad enough, and you just don't have the discipline, the willpower, you don't know how to try hard enough, you need to get more grit. Those kinds of things fall so flat to me because we're looking at diet rules, macros, numbers, all of these external things, which is fine. Some of this stuff is good enough to know, could be helpful to know. But when it comes down to it, what really gets in the way is how we're thinking. And how we're thinking creates how we're feeling. And every single action that we take is rooted in how do we want to feel or how do we want to stop feeling? And so it's very important to know how to understand what your client is thinking and how that makes them feel and why they operate from that place. So we can create new thoughts and feelings to help them operate from the place they really truly want to be operating from instead of their default mode, their old habit brain, the things that are giving them their current results. We help them get new results by using their brain instead of just the numbers.
Yeah, it's true. I think most people look at the Band-Aid solution, diets, meal plans, calorie counting, but until you really understand the emotional, social, and environmental triggers and how those influence the way you eat, you're really going to struggle to achieve permanent weight loss, I would say. And of course, when we commit to losing weight, we say we want success. We want to lose it forever, so we never have to do this again. We say we want to stop binge eating, compulsive eating, emotional eating, and we're committed that this time is going to be different every Monday morning when we wake up. But most people aren't really, again, looking at the underlying reasons for why they do what they do. And who can fault them? Why would they? This isn't the kind of thing that we get taught in school. Our parents aren't sitting us down and educating us on how our thoughts create feelings and feelings lead to our actions. But I will say that this podcast, our message, the Unstuffed program tends to attract professional dieters, people who've been dieting for a very long time and are desperate. They're like, you know what? This just might be the one thing that I have not tried and I'm willing to try. It's very different, but that's actually why it works, is because we're not just focusing on the external. And as we often say, we're not here to just throw a bunch of information at how to lose weight. Most of you already know how to do that. It's really just about the implementation, as you said, Steph. And so I think we should spend a few minutes here talking about why some people struggle while others don't. And the first thought that pops into my mind is because most people don't really have the first clue on how permanent weight loss actually happens. And this is how you can tell that's true. Generally, you feel like your diet is controlling you more than you're controlling it. So, like I said, not your fault. They're not teaching this in schools. It's nothing that I ever learned in a formal classroom. It's actually something you have to seek out, and you might learn it in therapy. But outside of that demographic, there's probably not a whole lot of classrooms that are having this conversation. Steph, any thoughts on that?
I wish that we were having this conversation. I visited with, I guess, a colleague in the industry the other day, and we were having this conversation talking about these kinds of things. And something that he said is like, why aren't people doing more of this? Why aren't they thinking about these things? Why are they so resistant? And when we were talking about how thoughts create feelings and how we have to kind of see where people are to kind of guide them through the steps of seeing it, giving them the skill set to change it, and then following through and actually rewarding themselves for the follow through and just the step by step process. I'm like, how can they? Who is teaching them? Who taught you? Literally no one. Like, who taught me? If you don't go after these kinds of things yourself, if you don't learn them yourself, it's not out there connected to so many of the things that people try to achieve. Weight loss being the one that we talk a lot about, but there are so many other goals that people go after and try to achieve: saving money, getting out of debt, buying a new house, having healthy, strong relationships, whatever it is. All of the principles are the same, and no one teaches this kind of stuff. Gosh, we really need, from preschool on, an emotional, what's the word? Why can't I think of the word all of a sudden? Emotional fluency type of class.
Yeah,
I wish we had it.
absolutely. It would be such a game changer with no real downsides. I don't see, it's too bad. We would have such a different society, different culture if we all kind of understood this about one another. And as a parent in particular, I wish I had learned this much earlier in life. So I feel like I would have had such better tools in navigating how to communicate with my daughter as she was young and growing up. I mean, we've had several conversations about it now that she's an adult, but it's just something that I was completely blind to. And I don't want our listeners to be blind to anymore, which is why the Unstuffed program was created, with this psychology pillar in particular, because it's not just enough to have the information. We need to be able to execute and follow through with the things that we say are important to us. I will say most of what we're learning through weight loss is through books and social media and, the wide variety of gurus on the internet. But as I said earlier, they're not really teaching you the why. And frankly, that's why 95% are still struggling. That's why 95% end up yo-yoing. I mean, we know the average adult will go on 126 diets in their lifetime. And most quit after day 6. Another fun little study that I'll throw in here is the average dieter in the US will spend $128,000 on weight loss, whether that's gym memberships, procedures, supplements, personal trainers, like all the things in a lifetime.
Foods.
128,000. So we are giving a hell of a deal whenever we open the doors to Unstuffed. That's for sure, because we are not changing. Yeah, for sure. So anyway, like we've said, diets do typically focus on the how, instead of the why. But the psychology teaches us that we don't just take random action. We have to feel something first. Feelings like enthusiasm, hope, fear, that's what drives us the motivation or creates the feeling of motivation to act. And so first, we have to have that thought, right? So for example, a common phrase we hear from dieters is, I'll get back on track tomorrow. When I said that to myself, it alleviated me from guilt or disappointment from breaking one of my food rules. And by saying tomorrow I'd get back on track, then I was committing that I was kind of justifying it, right? That it's okay to not follow through with my goal today or in this moment. So the thought, I'll get back on track, was the thought that created the feeling of maybe some relief and also gave me permission to eat. So that was the action step. Steph, any regular dieting thoughts that you can identify in your past that maybe display an example of how a thought created a feeling that led to an action for you?
Really, a lot of mine came down to the deeper version of this, which is the inherent beliefs. So thoughts create feelings, but thoughts we keep on thinking become our beliefs. And I had underlying beliefs that I had a slow metabolism, that I was somehow inherently broken, that I could never lose weight permanently because I had a lot of drive and motivation and commitment. I wasn't one of those back on track type of gals that would yo-yo throughout the week. I was someone who was very committed until the wheels completely fell off and weight would rapidly come back on. And then it just affirmed my deep belief that I had a slow metabolism, that something was wrong with me. Not the belief that, oh, well, I had been dieting and cutting my calories for, I don't know, 9, 12 months. So yeah, my metabolism had slowed down some because I weighed 30 pounds less. But then I ate like someone who weighed 40 pounds more when the wheels fell off, when everything kind of came crashing down. And so the weight would go, high, high, high. And then it reinforced that belief of like, well, if I'm not doing everything perfectly, I can never do this. I have to be perfect to lose weight. And if I thought I have to be perfect to lose weight, then I would feel fear. And if I was afraid, then I would delay restarting my diet because I was afraid I couldn't be perfect. And I had to wait until I had enough energy to commit to perfection before I could start again. And I usually didn't get that energy to be perfect again until I had at least regained every pound that I lost and then a couple more. Then I was ready because my desperation and disappointment was bigger than my fear of perfection. And so I had to get out of pain. And then my thoughts, I cannot stay in this body, created the feeling of desperation. And desperation led me to act in a perfectionistic way. And so the cycle continues.
Yeah, and probably extreme as well.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, though, the whole I have a slow metabolism. I mean, what woman has not developed that belief, honestly? But it's a really good example because I felt similarly. You and I are a little different in that you would take long breaks and I just took like these little mini stop-start breaks. I mean, mine would last at the longest, probably 2 to 3 days max. And then I was just like right back in there, but it was definitely a roller coaster ride for sure. Another example might be someone who thinks losing weight is impossible because they have PCOS or because they're going through menopause or on the other side of menopause or whatever the case may be. And if that's the case, then there's a good chance that they feel resigned, defeated. And if you feel resigned, you're likely going to grab that second donut when no one is watching and rush back to your desk to eat it. So without understanding how thoughts and feelings influence us, we continue to stay stuck in that salad prison with no real hope of ever getting it right. Or certainly when you have a history like yours and mine, it's hard to develop a belief in ourselves because we have broken the promise so many times that now we identify with somebody. We've, acquired this label of something is wrong with me, I'm broken, whether it's I have PCOS or I have a slow metabolism or I have ADHD, which is another one that's been coming up lately. And I'm like, oh, you should talk to my good friend, Coach Steph here. She knows all about having ADHD and chasing weight loss. So I think we should spend a few minutes here, Steph, just talking about how to change this now that we've set the foundation and explained a little bit how thoughts create feelings and feelings create actions, which is a huge message in and of itself. But I don't want to overwhelm anybody. I just kind of wanted to introduce the concept, the idea in today's episode. But how do we actually start to change this? If we know that our thoughts are responsible for our actions, and we have a belief that, okay, I have PCOS or I have a slow metabolism, right then and there, you can already kind of hear the defeat. So how do we start to change that identity and become a believer again?
Confidence is built through repeated action. And so I want to be able to boil this down into one thing that people can do, and that will be the thing. But we use a lot of different strategies depending on the circumstance. But one strategy, one of my favorites, is curiosity. It's kind of playing the devil's advocate a little bit. It's like, well, what if I did have a slow metabolism, but I still needed to lose weight? Then is there anything that I could do right now if I look at how I'm behaving, if I look at my habits and behaviors, is there anything I could still improve having a slow metabolism, and it might make a difference? Let's just see if there's something small I could change anyway. And then when we look at some of those things, sometimes it gives hope instead of defeat, or encouragement instead of defeat. And so we can just kind of reverse engineer it and say, what behavior do I really want to change? And if I want to change that behavior, what do I think each and every day that leads me to choose this thing? And if I have a slow metabolism is leading me to eat an extra donut every time somebody brings it into the break room, then how is that thought helping me? I need to change the thought and say, you know what, slow metabolism or not, I don't need an extra donut, but I can have it at lunch when I'm hungry. What if I thought that instead? Would that change the way that I showed up? Would that change the way that I operate? So I love curiosity. I love kind of playing devil's advocate and being like, okay, well, if this is true, then what? And the other one that I really love is, what else could be true? Or what could be true instead? What if it's not accurate? What if I didn't have a slow metabolism? If I didn't believe that, what would I be doing differently? So there are a lot of different ways that we could kind of go about this, but the reality is you have to kind of figure out what you're thinking, what is your barrier, find something new and practice it on purpose. You can't just come up with a new thought and say, yeah, that makes sense, and then go about your life. You have to, on purpose, change these thoughts. And one of the best ways to do that is put your pen to paper, write it down, unravel it, journal about it. And, of course, I can't tell you how to do that on a podcast. That's unfortunately, I would love to be able to do that, but that's what coaching does is.
Exactly. That's the value of getting access to what we refer to the mind shift method process in the Unstuff program. We literally teach you how to do that. So I agree. I feel like curiosity, awareness, because this all starts with making a conscious choice. And if we're not even aware of it, because let's be honest, when it comes to our thoughts, as you said earlier, they're habits too. They're happening on autopilot. We don't even question them. We don't second guess them. It's our default nature to just be existing from our current thought patterns and beliefs. And so as we often say around here, the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your questions. And so the problem is most of us are asking really crappy quality questions. What's wrong with me? Why can't I figure this out? Right? Things of that nature. And then they would just get us crappy results. And every reason why someone may feel like they can't succeed has an opposing reason why they can. This won't work for me. I don't have enough time. I can't afford it. It's not the right time, right? All of these things. And it all comes down to, as you were just saying, Steph, the questions that you ask. And this is what we call outcome-oriented questions. So how could I make this work for me? What would it look like to find the time? Right. So start looking at it from a place of devotion to solving the problem, as opposed to being married to it, surrendered to it, and allowing the conversation to end right there. And I think that's one skill that we learn a lot as entrepreneurs, but also as coaches, because there's always a solution. Every problem is solvable. The fact that it even exists tells me that there is a solution to this problem for 99% of the problems out there. So when we ask crappy quality questions, the reality is we're kind of just already accessing the part of our brain that is what's known, what we already know to be true, and it's our socialization, it's our past. But if you want to go somewhere outside of your brain, maybe like to the future, for example, then it is going to require you to ask a question, the courage to ask a question and explore the possibilities of the unknown, as my business mentor, James Wedmore, although I would say James Clear is definitely a close second in how he's influenced me. So anyway, this really just happens by expanding the diameter of our questions, our lives. And I think if we learn this skill, and Steph, we teach our clients this skill in our programs, then they can create different outcomes and make that dream a reality. But you're right, it does require action and proving to themselves little by little by little that they can do this, because their confidence is just in the gutter after years of failed attempts and not getting anywhere, or getting somewhere, in your case, somewhere big, making a lot of progress, and then have it all come back. I mean, that feels terrible. And I can see how people get paralyzed, and they're like, I don't want that pain again. So it's better to just hang out here. If I can't be perfect, then why even bother? Why even try?
It's the most painful thing to taste the success, to feel it, to experience it, and then have what it feels like, have it taken away. And so this skill set is by far the most valuable that I have ever learned in my own life, is to understand that my life is not just happening to me. And I hate it's not happening to you, it's happening for you. Fuck you. Like, no. Life is happening around you, but you are responsible for how you respond to it. And a lot of our responses are built into our psyche and our nervous system through what we learned growing up, through our childhood, what our parents gave us, our school, our peers, our partnerships, things that we just experience all the time. But when you take the blinders off and you realize that you have so much more power over your mind than you ever knew possible, you can think on purpose. I know it sounds so elementary, but you can think on purpose. It's wild, and it changes your life. I can't tell you how many people I've worked with that have said things to me like, well, I really just don't have an extra 4 hours a week to work out. And I was like, who the fuck said you had to work out 4 times a week for an hour? Where did you learn that? You just picked it up somewhere. And so then any smaller amount of workout, like 4 half-hour sessions or 4 20-minute sessions, all of a sudden aren't good enough. So they do 0 sessions because they think that 20-minute session would be a waste of their time. And the opposite is so true. I'm like, add up the minutes of 4 20-minute sessions over the course of your life versus 0. Do you think that it might be helpful to say, that was just one thing that I learned? It might not actually be true. It could possibly not be true just for me, for right now. Is it possible that I could learn to do something a different way and still see a benefit from it? just because one person said it one way does not mean that's the only way. And we have so much of our program is unlearning in addition to learning. You have to unlearn all those old beliefs and all that old programming to make room for the version of you, the future self version of you that, by the way, is depending on you to get this shit right. Like, that version of you doesn't have time, energy, more money, less responsibilities. Like, that version of you needs the you of you today to like work on this. If there is a fantasy version of you in the future, she needs you today, or they need you today. That's it. It's amazing.
Yeah, I can hear some of our listeners right now saying, yeah, you know what? Maybe that's possible for Jane, Mary, Rebecca, but not for me. Right? Because we're broken. And I get it. I used to think that way too. But how would it feel to actually be wrong about that? To prove yourself wrong? It really just boils down to, are you willing to learn a new way of thinking and doing? Maybe something completely different than you have ever learned before. But I will say, Steph, most of our listeners, not most, all of our listeners have already done this in other areas of their lives, and they probably don't even realize it. For example, it could be a belief about politics, religion, social justice, right? Could be about college relationships. How have you changed your mind over the course of your lifetime? For me, it was dieting, right? The longest time I thought that I had to count calories, cut out sugar, and exercise myself into the ground if I wanted to lose weight. And as we've talked about, that one belief cost me years of my life, years of punishing exercise and extreme restriction, years of attaching my worth to a number on a scale. I spent so much time looking for answers, solutions everywhere, but actually inside of me. And so it really wasn't until I started to unravel those emotional ties to eating that I was able to discover a new belief, one that has been able to set me free, and over 2,500 women now free through this process. And, it doesn't require a ton of willpower or discipline in the way that we're used to, although that's fine if you want to include that too. But it really just does come down to looking at your thoughts, your habits, your old, outdated beliefs, and being willing to say, these are the ones that are still working for me, and these are the ones that are not. And as you just said, Steph, unlearning and then replacing it with new ideas, new beliefs. And I will tell you, there's been a lot of research suggesting that the best way to do this is to immerse yourself in a culture of people who are already doing it, to learn from them, to be surrounded by people with the mindset, the habits, the beliefs that you do. I mean, we see this actually in religion all the time. We see this in political communities all the time, right? If you want to become like somebody, then you surround yourself with like-minded people.
I think that that's the hack. That's the shortcut, is choosing your brainwashing, so to speak. Like we said, beliefs are just thoughts you keep on thinking. So if you want new beliefs, how much easier do you think it's going to be to continue to think new thoughts when you're around a bunch of people that are also thinking that way, that are speaking that way, that are speaking the language that you want to learn? It's immersion into the culture instead of just trying to read a book about it and pick pieces apart. I don't know if you've ever tried to learn another language, but trying to do it by reading a book or even listening to audio lessons and things like that, that's definitely the hard way. But you get around people that speak that language and only speak that language, and you're forced to learn how to communicate. You learn a whole hell of a lot faster. And that's what this is too. It really is just immersing yourself in a new language, a new way of thinking, a new way of operating. It's drinking the Kool-Aid in the best possible way and watching your life change because of it.
Yeah, for sure. If I wanted to learn Italian, absolutely, you can learn it through audio lessons, attending a class, but there's not going to be a substitute for your ass getting dropped off in Italy for a month and having to figure things out. You may not be fluent at the end of the month, but I guarantee you, if you're in that culture, you're going to figure things out a hell of a lot more quickly than you would otherwise. So I just kind of see it as playing on easy mode versus hard mode. And I'm done with the hard mode part of life. When there is an easy mode, when I have access to somebody else's playbook, their experience, I don't want to continue, especially when it comes to something like weight loss. I mean, we are so burnt out. We are so fatigued. We have tried all the things. Like, I didn't want to waste another day banging my head against the wall. It was just like, just tell me what to do and how to do it. And unfortunately, there wasn't a program like this out there, so I didn't get access to that. But I wish I would have. And that's why Unstuffed was created, because it's the program I wish I had. It's the program I needed. And so really changing your beliefs really just comes down to 2 steps. As we've talked about, stuff, decide the person that you want to be, and then you're going to have to prove it to yourself through small actions. So, as we often remind our clients in our program, rewriting your identity as a successful 5%er. What does that look like to you? How would it feel to walk into a room, be the kind of person who had all of your favorite foods, let's say like a holiday party or something, and you felt completely indifferent, kind of neutral? It's like, yeah, that's exciting. I like that. But it doesn't feel scary or intimidating or like we're going to lose control. You're in control. You trust yourself. You've done this a million times. It's just food, after all, an inanimate object, right? And so I think the difference between the individuals, our successful 5%ers, if you will, they've just learned how to have different thought patterns. And they're not special people with more willpower or faster metabolisms. They just have learned to develop different beliefs. And as you said earlier, beliefs are just thoughts that you keep on thinking. So I would just encourage anyone who's listening to this podcast today, if you are remotely interested in learning more about this concept, then join us. Coach Steph and I are going to be hosting a live training on this very topic on Thursday, April 19th, 1 p.m. It'll be recorded, though, if you can't attend live. So I will go ahead and make sure that the details to register for that live training are in the show notes as well. But we're going to break these 3 pillars down that we've introduced you to throughout the course of these past few weeks and really help bring it all together so you can see what this actually looks like in your life and how you can apply it into your daily practice starting right away. Steph, any final thoughts as we wrap up today's episode?
Honestly, I think that we covered it, but those live trainings have historically been really fun and really informative. So if this is something that feels maybe interesting to you, but also a little bit confusing, if this is like listening to someone speak a different language, that's a great opportunity to jump in and learn something new in a way that is actionable. We always give actionable ways to apply these things to your own life. So make sure that you join us. We'd love to have you.
Absolutely. Be sure to check the show notes to register for that, because you do have to be registered to attend or receive the link to the replay. Okay, y'all, that is for us. That is it for us. Wow. Let's try that again. All right, y'all, that is it for us today. We will catch you next Monday with a very special client interview. Once again, stay tuned and we will see you.
Tuesday.
What did I say, Monday? Oh, it's such an old habit. All right, y'all, that is it for us today. We will catch you next Tuesday with a very special client interview. You definitely don't want to miss that with Melanie. We will see you then. Everyone have a great week.